Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. This is the time when we talk about what the mystery guitar is, and I think one of you got the actual model number right, maybe two of you did, and maybe three or four of you knew it was the Recording King. So it is an RO-318, and that is the Mahogany back and sides version of that lineup with Recording King, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The nut width on this is 1 11/16. 1 11/16, okay? And the string spacing at the second fret, I had to get a ruler out and measure this. It's actually 5/16, the string spacing. And right here where your picking hand is, which is interesting if you're not used to it, 7/16. So just a 1/16 of an inch under a half inch. So this thing is extremely friendly to fingerstyle guitar. Matter of fact, I really think that's what it was designed around. Now, a good friend on the channel, David Hayes, did a little digging on some historical things about what caused them to build these styles of guitars, and it appears they pretty much are Martin copies from like the 40s, and that's kind of interesting to me. Did they pull it off? Well, this thing has a 16-inch radius on the fretboard. That is an interesting field. I don't know that I've ever played a guitar with a 16-inch radius before. I'm wondering if the Slash version of the Epiphones and Gibsons don't have a 16-inch radius on the acoustic side, but I'd have to go back and look at that. This has it's a 25.4-inch scale length. I'll drop all the specs into the description, okay? I just wanted to point out some of the ones that kind of captured my attention a little bit. And maybe add a spec or two in that wasn't in the specifications on this guitar, such as the string spacing I mentioned. It's got a V neck on it, but it's not like that Supertone I've got. The Supertone I have has a really short V neck, thick, and I mean, yeah, it's when you put your hand around it, it hits that crease in your hand right there pretty hard. This one is a little smaller than that, but the neck width on this thing is pretty wide. It's beautiful, okay? It's absolutely beautiful. You saw the first video. If you didn't, you should. That is a I don't know how they do this sort of thing, but it looks just like tortoiseshell binding, but it's actually celluloid. And I'd have to do a little research on that, because celluloid, just the cellu part of it has me thinking, I always think paper, because that's what cellulose is some paper material, a wood product. But you can see the detail on this thing. And that's African mahogany, by the way. And the last time when I did the video and I uploaded it, I really didn't feel as though you could get a good look at the grain in this neck. So I'm going to hold that there a second. I did not turn my autofocus off, so hopefully it will focus in. Now this protrusion, I guess, where the headstock meets the neck, this is all one piece. And so I was told that there was a time when the neck and the headstock were two pieces on guitars, on some guitars, and they had a joint back there, I guess, that looked similar to this back years ago. And so I guess Recording King thought it looked good, so they just left it on there. But I believe this, according to David, is modeled after the a 40s 000 style of Martin, like a 0018. It has depth. It has sustain. It's like it'll go on ringing forever. And it's got that, it's like the sound vibrates out of it when you hit a certain frequency. You know what I mean? It doesn't do it every time, which is pretty cool if you think about it, because when it does happen, it's like, holy smokes, did you hear that? Folks, this is the only Chinese-made guitar I've got. And historically, it's no secret that a lot of the guitars made, many of the guitars made overseas, a lot of guitars made overseas, are slapped together. And not the greatest quality you'd ever see. Now, you know, as a matter of fact, to the point that when they first start looking at guitars and they go, well, I want to learn how to play guitar, and they go grab a guitar at a Guitar Center or somewhere like that, and they, you know, they're looking at this and they think, well, that's a kind of pretty guitar since it's only $150. Yeah, not too bad. I think I'll get that guitar and try to start on it. They put that in their hands, and poor quality, and you can barely fret the thing without bleeding, right? And they get discouraged and think, I don't want to put this kind of time and effort into it because this is killing my fingers, and then they put it down and never pick it back up again. This is not that guitar. I think out the door with a case, with a brand new Martin style of case to go with it. Beautiful case, by the way. This guitar listed, and if I wrote a check for the whole thing, would have been about $821. Now, 100 and something of that was a case. And because I won't buy a guitar without a case, especially if I think I'm buying a quality guitar. I haven't told you the best part of this story yet. This guitar, Recording King has a stockpile. I'll say that. And I don't know where this wood's stored. I guess in San Francisco, out in that area where their engineering group is. 30-plus-year-old Adirondack spruce that's been sitting. And they're putting them on the RO models, which are these triple O guitars. They're putting them on their dreadnought style of guitars, which I think is supposed to mimic the D28, HD28 Martin. And a few of you out there, I know on the channel, have the Recording King RD, I think it's called an RD-318, which is the Mahogany, or an RD-328, which is, I think it's the East Indian Rosewood. Now, this is African Mahogany that I've got on this guitar. So what's cheap on this guitar? The tuners are cheap. I'm going to have to assume the labor was very inexpensive on this guitar. The pick guard's just a cut piece of plastic. That's pretty cheap, right? The pins that were in it were the plastic pins, so I've done two things. I took a tusk plastic, right, and replaced the original plastic pins and put the tusk in there because I wanted to tone this guitar down a little bit. It's got a great balance on it, but it was a little bright with those pins. They seem to be a little brighter, so I put the tusk in there, and can I tell a difference? I don't know. I don't know if I can tell a difference with it or not. Probably not with as much as you might think, right? Because this tusk, they're going to be a little harder. These plastic pins, especially these cheap ones that you get, that cheap plastic from overseas, you can almost put it between your fingers and bend those bridge pins. With this tusk, you're not going to do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Okay. Sometimes I have a hard time finding the string because I'm not used to this kind of string spacing. So where I think a string is, it's not there. It's air, okay, in between. And sometimes when I go to fret down here, so I'm going to have to get used to this guitar. I'm not used to it yet. I think the sound on it is pretty incredible. Now, you know, I said the tuners were cheap tuners on here, and they're open back. They're open back tuners, kind of a Waverly style, right? And the ratio, you know, you can sit and turn these things forever almost. So the ratio to these things is pretty high. So at some point, I may change those out. But once you get the guitar tuned, because I changed the strings out on it and I put Martin Retro 12s on it as well, it holds the tune really, really well. I mean, I was out of the country for a week, and then half a week I was gone after I got back, and I hadn't pulled this thing out of the case. And when I finally got back this past week, late Wednesday night or Thursday morning, I pulled this thing out of the case and strummed it, and it was still in tune. So they'll hold the tune fairly well, but you can kind of tell, you know, if you've owned some guitars, you can spot a reasonably cheap tuner, you know. And that's kind of the story on this one. So this Adirondack, aged 30+ year top. It's not been played in, but it has been sitting in stockpile. And that's what Recording King built this line of guitars out of. And when they run out of it, there's not going to be any more. Now, the story on this one, folks, guitar and case, I paid $21 for it. Don't shoot me, all right? But I only paid $21 for it. And the reason was because I had some gift cards that some very kind individual had provided me with. And so I was interested in this lineup from Recording King because I'd heard so many good things about it. So I thought, why not roll the dice a little bit, you know, and try one of these things out, because I think the last time I bought a guitar that was made in China was 1990s, maybe 2000, early 2000s. I don't know. You know, the year 2000 doesn't seem like it was that long ago to me, but some of you that are watching this video might not even been born yet. And it's 2023, so, you know, time is moving pretty quickly. But the neck, I just tweaked a little bit to take a little relief out of it. I think I've shaved, to date, I have shaved off about 1/16 of an inch off this saddle because it was pretty high when I got it. And I'm not through, but I'm not going to shave too much off of this saddle. The minute you lose that breakover point on this saddle, you're in bad shape. If you got to lower it that much, then you got intonation problems on the guitar. So I may pull a little bit more off and see what happens. If I don't like that, I'm taking it to a luthier, having the nut pulled, having the bridge pulled, and I'm going to have them go through the guitar and get it set up perfectly, instead of my homemade job on it, you know. So I want to point out a couple of things on this guitar. I think it's very well built. I think overall for the money, it's a heck of a buy, okay? The likelihood of you sending it to a luthier to get everything right on it are reasonably high. And I would recommend you do that if you decide to buy the guitar. It's loud. It has incredible sustain. And I'll pick up this J45 here in a minute, this Epiphone, inspired by Gibson J45, and I'll strum on it a second just to give you some indication of the difference between the two guitars. Of course, that's a Dreadnought guitar, but I think you'll have some, what's the word I'm looking for? You'll have the ability to hear it up against another guitar priced similarly, okay? And that's an overseas guitar, but of course the difference is that Epiphone, inspired by Gibson, was built in a custom shop in Indonesia. And of course this one was made in China. But I've taken a few breaks doing this video because I really wanted to give it a good review. And so one of the breaks I took, I was out back with my wife, and we were sitting out there, and folks, I saw the biggest raccoon I've ever seen in my life out there. We've seen raccoons before, but not like this. This thing was huge. And matter of fact, I was sitting there just stunned at how big this thing was, just walking out back and going down the property line there and headed out to the woods. And man, this thing was huge. Anyway, thought I'd mention I should have took a picture of it. You wouldn't believe how big this thing was. We wasn't sure what it was, you know. But anyway, it's a nice guitar. It's got a bone saddle and a bone nut on it. This 16-inch fretboard radius is, you know, the higher that number, the flatter the fretboard. So typically on these acoustics, you're going to see about a 12-inch radius or so. I think that's right. This one's a 16. It's fairly flat. This feels more classical to me from a fretboard standpoint. But the string spacing is what's going to take me a while to get used to, and it's just a matter of getting used to it. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just when you're used to playing a different fretboard radius with not so much space between the strings, then you're going to have to get a little bit used to it. But do I think it's worth the money? Yes, I do. Even if you had to spend a couple of $100 on the guitar after you got it, is still worth the money just because of the quality of the woods that are used on this guitar. So maybe a fingerstyle tune, and then I'll pick up this J45 over here, and we'll look at that. Clearly a difference. Depends on what you're using the guitar for, I guess. That would probably depend on which guitar you pick up, right? So if you've got more than one guitar, you find yourself gravitating to one of them for a particular tune you're trying to accomplish. And this is no different. This has got a very clear sound to it. And the clarity is kind of off the charts in my opinion. The Gibson J45, inspired by Gibson, the Epiphone, inspired by Gibson J45. It's a phenomenal instrument. Both these guitars worth the money, no doubt about that. I would say the likelihood of you making major adjustments to your Epiphones out of that custom shop, serious adjustments to them, no. You will make some adjustments to them, yes. But you're going to be very comfortable playing any of those guitars. This one, on the other hand, the Recording Kings, my guess is you're going to have to do some things to them. However, the tone coming out of this guitar and the detail that went into it, replace the tuners, get the action right on the guitar, and you will want to get used to this fretboard, okay, and this string spacing. String spacing is the one that's really got me it's got me at a place I've never been before with a guitar. In other words, I've got a guitar in my hands, and it's going to take me a while to get used to playing this guitar. But I'm going to tell you, I want to get used to it. That the guitar does make me want to get used to it. Folks, it's worth the money. But after you strum it a few times, you'll clearly probably see that you're going to have to take it to a professional. I'm not sure about the nut height. I'm still looking at that. Off of that first fret. How uncomfortable is it? It could probably stand to be lowered. I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know when you get a high nut on a guitar, you're going to hurt your fingers playing down here on the neck. And no matter what you do to that saddle, you're not going to eliminate this. And so, yeah, I think the strings are going to have to come off the more I play it. And I think the nut height is probably a little too high. I think the saddle's probably where it should be. But it's got some action challenges. But what a beautiful sound. Fortunately, my fingers are very, very calloused. Yeah, it's a great little guitar for the money. Spend a little money, get it set up. You find yourself in good shape, okay? Sorry the video took so long to get out, but it's been active lately. So I just wanted to get it done and get it finished this weekend, because I know there's some folks out there waiting to hear about this guitar, and I didn't want to make them wait too long, okay? So take care of your friends, take care of your family. God bless. It's always great to see you here. We'll see you next time.